cloudy today. At least the harsh winds aren't here. It's kind of crazy yesterday. And what's going on today? It's kind of interesting reading this one. Imagine, I guess, flying thousands of drones, I guess, in this case, possibly for things like, I guess, military purposes. This one says, drone swarms with 1,000 unmanned aircraft could be possible within 5 years, DARPA leader says. So will this be the norm? It says within the next 5 years, it could be possible for the US military to launch swarms of drones consisting of as many as 1,000 unmanned aerial systems, a top official at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency told FedScoop. DARPA has been testing this type of technology, and it says since 2017, the agency has conducted at least 6 field experiments at various locations as part of its offensive swarm-enabled tactics. It's called Offset program. One of the tests included about 100 drones. Kenneth Plax, acting director of agency's Strategic Technology Office, said Tuesday at the Sea Airspace Conference at National Harbor, Maryland. And it says here, it looked like the jukebox of apocalypse, he said during a panel of discussion. But even that really doesn't scale to the numbers we're talking about, launching in the future. Imagine, like, I guess 10,000 of these things, I guess, flying around. Although I don't think they would be as big as this, would they? I would imagine it would be used for kamikaze, I guess, purposes. And it says here, in terms of the time, it takes an hour just to get everybody marshaled and on and off the runway. Now, how do you launch and control 1,000 aircraft? It's certainly doable, I think, within the next 5 years. I don't see any technical impediments, especially if they're highly autonomous. It will be the way of the future, I guess, ultimately anyways, in terms of warfare. Again, people fearmonger toys and stuff like that, whereas things like this is what you should be worried about overall if you're talking about things like danger and safety and all that. And this was kind of interesting, where this was announced a while ago, but I guess it's official, where in terms of things like the vaccine card here in BC, it's going to be removed. Like here it says, BC COVID-19 vaccine card no longer required as of April 8th. So it's kind of interesting too in getting rid of this. It seems like some people are saying it's great, basically get things back to normal and all that, whereas some people are still terrified over this, thinking, for example, there's more chances they're going to get exposed to the virus with, like, just say a vaccinated or an unvaccinated. Like, just reading this comment online, for example, it's kind of interesting to think about, because here this person says, I'm going to get downvoted, but I don't care. I am worried about the high numbers of unvaccinated people who carry higher viral loads sitting next to me at a restaurant. The passports didn't stop unvaccinated people from going to the grocery stores, from doing day-to-day life. So now those of us who did everything right, who got the shot and the boosters and trust the science, don't get to go to restaurants because you can't eat with a mask on because the boosters are the only really functionally effective for 10 weeks and essentially nil at 16 weeks. It's kind of contradicting there if you think about it, because this person here, I guess based on the science, they're really afraid of an unvaccinated person, but they even kind of mention here, like with the boosters and stuff like that, if someone was vaccinated and it was like, I don't know, months ago, then theoretically wouldn't they be just like everyone else? So how could you say this guy is more, I don't know, protected than the other guy? Now, why this is interesting to think about too, because it just seems like a lot of people have this weird perception or something like that. Like, just say an unvaccinated person is more contagious than, let's just say, a vaccinated person per se, whereas like with that official CDC data before, it showed you the biggest difference, it seemed like, was whether or not someone got the virus and then recovered. And why that's kind of interesting now is recently, as you guys know, in the US, there was basically a court order forcing them to release data with things like the Pfizer shot. And this is kind of interesting actually, because like with this one here, it says request for priority review, COVID-19 vaccine, and it's this report from May 2021. Now, why this was actually really interesting, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I'm wondering, why aren't there discussions about this? This is important, I think, for people to actually understand what's going on, what's the best way to approach things. Like, why aren't health officials talking about this? Now here, it says in this little part, efficacy against severe disease. So try wrapping your head around this. Again, I'm not a doctor and so forth, but when you read this, it kind of implies in many ways, just like the data with the CDC, again, it's more about whether or not you got it and recovered per se, ultimately. It says efficacy against severe disease. among participants without evidence of SARS-CoV-2 infection before and during the vaccination regimen, evaluable efficacy population, the estimated VE against CDC-defined severe COVID-19 occurring at least 7 days after dose 2 was 100%. Two-sided 95%, CI, etc., 100%, with 0 and 32 cases in the BN2, 162b2, and placebo groups, respectively. Similarly, estimated VE was also 100% among participants with or without evidence of SARS-CoV-2 infection before and during the vaccinating regimen, also with 0 and 32 cases in the BNT, 162b2, and placebo groups, respectively. Again, I'm not a doctor, but from reading this and trying to understand it, it's essentially saying almost they have kind of like similar protections per se. So you can't really say, I guess, based on the science, if someone's unvaccinated, let's say they got it and they recovered, theoretically based on this, if it's science and this data, it's almost virtually the same thing. So that's basically illogical. If you're saying this guy is vaccinated, this guy's unvaccinated, you're next to them, like there's no proof, like scientifically based on this, whether or not you're gonna get it or spread it more, like from this person or the other. They're kind of the same thing in this case. It makes me think logically, in this case, why it doesn't make sense to me why people are fearing, let's just say, I don't know, vaccinated, unvaccinated, since everyone can get it and spread it according to all the data. It reminds me of a story before. Have you guys ever heard that story about the Sentinelese people or something like that? Like they're stuck in an island. They've basically been away from civilization. They can't speak the language. And the fear is that if they come in contact with an average person, let's just say myself or you, it's really deadly to them because they've never gotten, let's just say, antibodies. They've never been exposed to certain diseases. So you could wipe out the whole population just with a common cold or something like that, according to this. Like there, technically it's you that needs to, I guess, stay away from them because that was supposed to be the whole concept before too, in terms of, I guess, lockdowns and all that, where if people were blaming a quote unvaccinated person for being in the hospital and all that, the theory there would be, again, it's anyone who's not quote protected should be the one that's in, I guess, fear, if that's the right way to say it. So that doesn't make sense in my opinion. It's kind of like, it's very anti-science in my opinion. Alright, see you guys later.